I just hope that people kind of look at kind of education and look at teaching in a more sort of like holistic way, you know, that we can kind of think, right, what is it that we want to teach these young people? You know, what kind of people do we want them to be when they come out of this school, rather than what grades do we want them to have?
Hey Lawrence.
Hey Josh.
I've been thinking about the podcast. How about in the first series we focus on the pandemic?
Yeah, and in each episode we can ask our guest how it's been affecting them and what they do.
We could ask people to join in with the hashtag #PosNegative.
How would we introduce it each week?
We'll just say, welcome to Positive Negative. In this episode, I talk with my good friend James. We've known each other about 5 years, and my favourite memory of him is when we camped 3 or 4 years ago in Ullapool. On a really miserable looking day, we set off on the 7 to 9 hour hike up Sullivan. Half an hour or so into the walk, and long before we'd even begun to start going up, we stopped at a bothy to get out of the wind and rain. Inside, another 20 or so hikers were doing the same, and we all looked at each other as if to say what a shame it was that today was the day we'd chosen to go up. As I refueled, retightened my shoelaces and improved my waterproofing, I thought of the warm car that was waiting for us. James was beside me, quietly readying himself too. Then we threw our bags on our backs, looked at each other, and it was then I realised that while I'd been thinking about what cake I was going to get with my coffee when we got back to town, it hadn't even occurred to him that we'd not finished what we set out to do. We saw 2 more people in the 6 or 7 hours that followed, and it was one of the most epic days of my life. And if I'd not started it with James, the chances are it would have finished in the pub at lunchtime instead.
Yeah, so my name's James. I'm a PE teacher based in Glasgow. As I'm sure you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not a native to Glasgow. I'm originally from Derry in Northern Ireland. I moved to Glasgow about 6 or 7 years ago now. I actually always lose track of it. To do a PGDE, obviously with the ambition of becoming a secondary PE teacher. And did my probation here the year, then actually moved back home for a year, just looking for work and stuff there. And Northern Ireland sort of being the way it was, a bit quieter, a bit smaller and so on, you know, work didn't really come about quite as easily. So I thought, you know, I've still got friends and so on in Glasgow, so I decided to move back. And kind of been here ever since. When I came back, I was actually working in the additional support needs sector. That's how we met, obviously. I was working in various schools in that sector, and then only this year, well, not this year actually, this academic year, I should say, past in August there, I started back in mainstream education, and that's where I was working whenever we eventually broke up about, I think it's actually about 5 weeks ago now. It's hard to believe it's been so long, but yeah, about 5 weeks ago now we broke up, and yeah, this is where we find ourselves, I guess.
So what impact has it all had on you so far?
Yeah, it's quite amazing how much you kind of adapt to your surroundings and your situation, and how things kind of change, and it's only whenever you kind of sort of sit down and think about, like, you know, how it's affected you, do you really kind of realize how bizarre it all is and how different it really is. At the beginning, it kind of felt a little bit like a summer holiday, or, you know, like another holiday that we're on. And obviously, you know, people will say teachers get plenty of holidays, so we'll be used to being off and so on. But yeah, that's kind of how it felt at the start. And obviously getting used to working online was very, very different, particularly as a PE teacher. You know, it's such a practical subject, and so much of what I do just involves that teacher pupil interaction, you know, and so much of it is practical based that sending work online was just, it wasn't hard to get your head around as such, you know. It was straightforward enough, but it was just so different from what we've been doing previously. And yeah, it's but I think I'm into the swing of things now, like, and just in general, you know, I'm getting into a bit of a routine, still trying to kind of get up early in the morning, getting some exercise done, doing a bit of reading, doing a little bit of school work and so on, and then doing things like, I've started things like I've actually started baking a bit and stuff too, like, but yeah, it's not been too bad. I live with my partner Claire, and whenever you think about the term lockdown, you kind of think, gosh, that's going to be it's pretty hard to get used to, being confined to the same flat day in, day out. But it's actually been okay, and I think, obviously with being able to get out for going to the shops and your exercise or whatever, it's really not been too bad. And I think because both of us have kind of been like in a good routine, it's been okay. It's been it's been a bit of a weird scenario, but I think we're coping quite well with it. And obviously with the weather being so good too for the last number of weeks, like, it's really sort of lent itself to kind of making the most of that, really. Like, so not too bad overall. Not too bad.
So what kind of contact do you have with your pupils? Is it individual or telephone or email or?
I haven't had any interactions with them on the telephone, but we got an email at the start of the week from our head teacher, like, requesting volunteers to come into the school just like for a couple of hours to kind of take phone calls and answer questions that parents and stuff might have. I haven't actually had to do that yet, like, because it's only one or two staff that's required at a time, and quite a lot of staff put their names forward, so it's just kind of on a rota basis doing that. But the contact that I've had with people has been through a couple of different formats. The program that we would have used even before this whole lockdown thing to, like, use homework and stuff was something called Show My Homework. So we've kind of continued to use that, but like on a kind of more daily basis. And from, obviously all work is homework now, like, so we've been sending out work on that, and you can send that out to individuals, you can send that out to classes. So I've been kind of using that to keep in contact with pupils and send them work. But we've also got something which I know a lot of companies and stuff are using, and I've even seen an advert for it in the TV now, is something called Microsoft Teams, which is quite a good program, actually. It's really user friendly. You can do lots of different things on it. You can send videos and pictures, and you can link to it quite easily and stuff. And our kids have been on that, and there's been quite a bit of interaction on that from pupils and so on, that we've kind of been sending them over both, just so that each pupil's covered, like, because we're very sort of aware of, like, the limitations that are in place for some pupils, in terms of access to technology. And a lot of kids are maybe working off their phone and stuff, and that doesn't really lend itself very well to looking at documents or downloading links and stuff that that we might send them. So it's trying to sort of be mindful of the limitations that a lot of kids maybe might encounter, because they don't all have their own laptop or PC at home to work off, and very often they don't have a quiet space they can go and sit and work in. So we've been kind of trying to keep it as kind of fun and enjoyable as possible, and just keep that contact as much as possible. And obviously there's no kind of like pressure on kids to be constantly handing in work. And we've always been getting emails from our head teacher reminding us of keeping the workload kind of at a minimum, because it's such a unique scenario that kids aren't used to, and parents are having to homeschool kids and stuff, and it's a lot of stress for people. Even without the whole homeschooling thing, it's a lot of stress for people to be under because of the whole COVID scenario. It just brings with it so much additional stress that trying to homeschool your son or daughter is going to be something that you want to kind of make as easy as possible. And that's kind of what we're bearing in mind when we do it, and kind of constantly trying to tweak things, and always kind of look at the work that we're sending out and what's kind of being received well. The good thing about programs like Show My Homework and Microsoft Teams is that you can kind of be quite creative with it, and you can set quizzes and so on, which are quite lighthearted and a little bit more user friendly in terms of how kids interact with them. So some of the work I've sent out this week has been quizzes, and they've been really, really well received, because they're kind of like, just click a button here, and you get your score, and there's kind of instant feedback and so on. It's easy enough to manage that way. So yeah, it's just kind of, I think everybody's just getting used to it. Everybody's kind of working out what works and what doesn't work, and what's being received well by the pupils, and yeah, it's been received really well by some. It's there's some pupils that you're not really hearing anything from, but I guess that's kind of expected, and you have to put yourself in their shoes sometimes and think, if you were at home off school for whatever number of weeks, and there's no teacher standing over you saying you have to do that work. Are you going to do it all the time? And if we're honest with ourselves, probably not. And fair play. I take my hat off to any of the people that are engaging with it and are doing it and stuff. And I think as the weeks go on, more and more people might find themselves interacting with it, because they might find themselves, strangely enough, missing school and missing that teacher interaction, and just, not having as much contact as what they're used to. And then they might start seeking it out in other ways, and they might start engaging with the work a little bit more. But so far it's been pretty well received, and there's been good engagement with it on the whole, really.
Are you able to get a sense of how the kids are coping with it, or is that are you kind of a bit of an arm's length? Is that possible to?
I would say that it is difficult to sort of gauge how they're coping with it, because at most you're kind of getting like a short snippet of a video back. If I've set them like a physical challenge of, say for instance, this week I set them the challenge of seeing how long they could do from a standalone jump. So lots of them were just sending in the actual score, typing it in and sending it along. But some of them were obviously getting video by parents and so on, and sending that in. And there's obviously only so much you can gauge from that. They look like they're coping quite well with it. But I suppose the ones who are sending in videos and are well engaged with the work and their parents are involved and stuff are probably coping with it a bit better than those whose parents perhaps aren't as engaged and who aren't maybe kind of coping with it quite as well. The good work that you're seeing is coming from kids who are probably in quite a healthy sort of like home life and are coping better with it than those who were maybe not hearing so much from. And then that's where the kind of request for volunteers to go into school and make phone calls and stuff comes in, and just kind of keeping tabs on the young people who are kind of most vulnerable. And I think that's not really something that I've been heavily involved with. That's more kind of like a pastoral care team issue. And I know that speaking to some of my colleagues who are sort of involved pastorally wise have been keen to sort of stay in touch with young people who they know could sort of, at the best of times, sort of like fall through the cracks, for want of a better phrase, and become very, very disengaged very quickly and aren't in the most stable sort of environment at home or whatever. And those are the ones that we would definitely worry about. And yeah, as I say, it's difficult when you're not sort of able to, have a sort of face-to-face conversation with the young person. It's difficult to gauge how they're feeling and how they're coping and whatever. Like, you're just relying on a wee message here and there. But, lots of the messages are sort of positive, and they have a slant on them that is positive, and they'll say, "Oh, sir, great to hear from you, and the work's been good." You'll get a message like that through every now and again, which is just so, it's amazing to hear things like that, and you kind of, it almost you're taken aback a little bit, because you're like, gosh, I didn't think that would affect me as much as it has, and I didn't think it matter. Well, obviously it matters a lot to you, because that's why you get into the profession. But it's amazing how much you kind of miss that interaction with people. And I actually said to Claire last week, I even miss arguing with people. I work in a school that's probably get a fair amount of deprivation, and there's obviously testing kids in every single school, no matter, young people are young people, and that's just the way life is. But on a sort of daily basis, I would have, interactions with people that, are testing and stressful or whatever, like, and I just said to Claire, I was like, I actually miss that, I miss that being tested, I miss like that interaction and having to think and have to be like, having to sort of deal with, scenarios that you're not expecting, and like putting out fires here and there, and then ultimately kind of resolving that, and that, like, the relationships that come with that, because young people are good to be around. Like, there's no two ways about it. They you never know what you're going to get, really. Like, and it's just it keeps you on your toes. Like, and yeah, it's funny like that.
I was going to ask you, what do you miss most from being in school? So yeah, I guess you're kind of
arguing with kids. No, it's whenever you're having a really good day and in school, you're kind of just, what that normally looks like is, kids are very engaged, and the kind of the work or whatever, or the tasks and stuff that you've sort of set have gone really, really well. But the kind of small things, being a PE teacher, just conversations in between classes, or like waiting outside the change rooms, and you get a bit of banter with some of the kids and stuff. When you have conversations with them, you can kind of let that human side of you come out a wee bit more, and then they sort of engage with you a little bit more and become themselves, and those barriers kind of fall down a wee bit. Those are like those really small things like that aren't really that tangible, but you can kind of, when you look back on, you're like, yeah, that's kind of what it's all about. And that's what I always think. And one of the teachers in the very first school that I ever taught in, one of the things he said to me was just that teaching is just, it's all about relationships. It's, if you want to be any way successful in this profession, you need to build good relationships, and you need to work in those relationships, and that's where that's why those relationships are made, is just those small conversations that you might have with them, totally off the cuff. And those are the kind of things that kind of build those relationships and sort of solidify them. And those are the things I think the kids remember far more than anything you've taught them. Obviously you want them to remember things that you've taught, like, without doubt, but from a sort of on a personal basis, like those are the things that are kind of most important. And those are the things that you kind of then miss, that daily interaction on, there's like over 1,000 kids in my school, and I could see 700 kids out of that 1,000 in any one day. And that constant barrage of kind of like conversations, whether it be 10 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever, it just stimulates you in a way that, like, I'm not getting just now, when it keeps your brain active and keeps you thinking. And you get a lot of enjoyment out of that for sure, and it's just kind of, yeah, I guess that is what I miss most about it. And the longer this all kind of goes on, I think I'm going to miss it that bit more. And I think whenever we get back, everybody's going to kind of appreciate it that bit more, and kind of, hopefully those relationships won't be kind of as fraught as they maybe once were, when people kind of think that he's not such a bad guy after all.
What do you think it'll be like when you do go back? Do you think, like, let's assume that it won't be this academic year, which I think is the general consensus, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. John Swinney, I think it was last week, came out and said that it's unlikely to be August. Now, I'm not entirely sure what he's basing that on, and it seems like a pretty sort of bold statement to be making at this stage, considering nobody else is really saying that. But if somebody in his kind of position is saying anything along those lines, then it's probably going to be quite close to that anyway. So yeah, that'll be I haven't worked out the number of weeks that's going to be, but that's such a long time to not be in school, because even when you go back after summer holidays, which is here in Scotland about 6.5 weeks, it takes you a while to kind of get up to speed again, teachers and staff, everybody's sort of broken in gently, and just the very basics of like remembering 30 kids' names at the one time, and just kind of coping with the volume of people is something that takes a wee while to get used to. So I'd imagine we'll all need week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month to kind of remember what it is we all do and how we do it. And then, on the flip side of that, obviously, I hope that things do return to normal quite quickly, because normal in school is good. Like, it's been that way for a long time, like, and it's probably like that for a reason, and I think it'll take a bit of getting used to for sure. Young people, I think, will be kind of ready for it and craving it almost, to go back and get that stability, because as much as you kind of have daily kind of altercations with young people, and like there can be arguments and it can be quite fraught, as I said, I think a lot of the young people who are maybe the most vulnerable as well, crave that stability and that security that comes from school, because even, I find that towards the end of terms and stuff in the school that I'm at the moment anyway, we'd have a lot of young people still coming into school, even on the last day of term, where you often expect numbers to be really, really low. Ours are quite high, and that's just because school is like the kind of safest, most kind of secure place in these young people's lives. And if they're going for 3, 4, 5 months without that stability and security, then I think they'll really, really, hopefully, appreciate it, whenever it comes back, and it can kind of get kind of back into the way of going relatively smoothly and quickly.
So have you got any kids that are that would be having their exams now, or school leavers?
Yeah, so yeah, I think it was just before we broke up, like maybe like the day before that they said fourth, fifth, and sixth years, no exams. Um, which was a bit of a shock to the system, to be honest. When people were trying to sort of get their head around what that meant, that's such a huge, huge thing from so many different angles. And the young people were all fretting because they were thinking, right, what am I going to get from my grades now if I don't get to sit this exam and kind of prove my worth? What's it going to go off? And then teachers were worried because a lot of the responsibility to give grades would fall upon their shoulders, and that's kind of where we're at. That's teachers are now going through the process of looking back on work that's been done before and going on prelim results and stuff, and trying to figure out a grade for each pupil. And particularly with school leavers and those looking to go to university and so on, that's a big responsibility because young people's lives are kind of then, their futures are kind of in your hands, and you want to give them the fairest kind of representation of where they're at. And yeah, I think that's the process that we're all going through at the minute. We're all trying to figure out and just use our professional judgment, and that's the word that keeps getting reiterated, is like your professional judgment, use it, and everything that you know about that young person, and kind of give them the fairest result that possible.
Mm. Do you think doing it that way will do any kids a disservice? Like, are there kids that don't do very well right up to the last minute and then really kind of pull their socks up and really do? Like, do you think there are kids that might kind of slip through?
I mean, for sure, there are so many kids who approach exams in such different ways. Personally speaking, I was somebody who definitely left things to the last minute. And historically, results from prelims are always much, much worse than they are from actual exams, because kids hear prelim and they just think, well, that's just a rehearsal. It doesn't really matter. But now it actually really does. And if somebody has kind of gone into a prelim like half-heartedly and not really worked that hard at it, it's probably not a true reflection of what they would have gotten in the end up. But again, that is something that we've been kind of given liberty to take into consideration, is the attitude towards prelims, and that kind of more kind of well-rounded kind of picture of a person, not just from a prelim. We kind of take into consideration the work that they've done in class the whole year, or the years leading up to where they are now. And it is difficult to try and get that right, because ultimately we don't really know how that person would have performed in an exam. And an exam is such a unique scenario. There's no way of like kind of replicating that. So yeah, there's going to be kids who probably come out of it maybe overachieving. There'll be those who underachieve, and there'll be those who we get just right, and hopefully that's the majority of it. And it's a funny one, because some of the information that was released last week, I think, that we were all given was that whenever the SQA go to look at that's the examination authority, whenever they go to look at results and stuff, and they're kind of assessing the results that we've given, they're going to use the previous 3 years of exam results from that school as a kind of like baseline, and the average from that they're going to work off that. And I was speaking to my colleague about it, and I was thinking, well, that could work two ways, because you could have a particularly gifted year who would have overachieved compared to previous years in the school, and maybe that's going to be a detriment to them, whereas you could have like a sort of weak year or a weaker year, and they'll maybe be brought up as a result of this previous average and so on. So it's difficult, and it's really it's hard to know how to pitch it just right. I have nothing obviously to go off in terms of previous years. I can only take sort of what I've seen this year and use that, and speak to colleagues and so on, and have conversations with them and figure out if that person is consistent this year to what they've been in previous years and so on. And yeah, it's there's no kind of straightforward like equation to kind of go off and work it out. It's very kind of subjective, I suppose, isn't it?
How are you feeling today about it all? How are you kind of, is today a good day, a bad day, or are you?
Yeah, I would say today's been a good day. This week in particular has been a busier week than normal, because the way we've been kind of managing workload within my own department, within the PE department in school, is that for the first to third years, each kind of member of the PE department has kind of been responsible for first to third year on a weekly basis, on rotation. So this week's been my week to kind of set them work, which is kind of involved physical tasks and then like a written task as well. Just something fun, something kind of to keep them engaged and so on. So it's been my week this week, and I've kind of gone with like an Olympics theme because they were kind of due to be this summer, and they're obviously not going to be now. They're 2021, but I just thought we would kind of try and replicate some Olympic events in home. So I've been kept busy with that, and I've been releasing a new event every day. So today was replicating weightlifting, so I was kind of getting them to fill their school bags with like soup cans and bags of flour or whatever, and then do some weightlifting events with that and post their scores online. So that's been really, actually, it's been loads of fun for me. I've really enjoyed that. So I think that's put a real positive slant on this week for me, because it's been really, like, I've been constantly engaged throughout the full day, because that first to third year kind of involves, that's over 300 pupils, so obviously not all of them are engaging with it, but a fair amount of them are, so I've kind of been constantly on my laptop looking at new scores coming in and tying them all up and making sure that I keep track of everybody's, because at the end of the week we're going to have like a bronze and a silver and a gold medalist from the boys and girls sections in each year group and so on. So it's really been, I've really enjoyed it, like, and the feedback from that's been really good. And so that, along with I was out my bike, was really, really good. I've kind of been trying to get out every day and do some form of exercise, so I did that, and then came back and had some lunch and so on. And as I was saying to you before we started recording there, I've got some pizza ordered, which is going to be coming after this. So good day today. But overall most days have been quite good, and I've just had the odd day where motivation has kind of been a bit lower than normal, and when you kind of get a bit of a rut, or a bit of a funk, you're just kind of hard to shake it. But those days have been definitely few and far between, and that's actually something that I kind of been wrestling with, is that overall I've really felt quite positive throughout all of this. I've really, I like, as and I'm like a keen runner, and I've kind of been able to go out and train kind of when I want and how much as I want, and I've probably never been fitter, and I've kind of had a really good routine, and I've been reading loads of books, books that have been sitting on my shelf for months that I've been meaning to read, but I've kind of been like a bit, not the easiest books to read. So I've kind of been stuck into them, and I'm learning loads. And then, you go on Twitter, or you see the news, and obviously, like, that's not the case for a lot of people right now. And there's a certain sense of guilt that attached to that a wee bit, and I've kind of been thinking, should I be feeling so kind of content and happy? Like, and I actually said to Claire, I was like, I feel kind of constantly quite content at the moment. I've got a decent routine going on. I feel like I'm sort of stimulated enough with work. Obviously, that could be better, but overall, I do feel quite good a lot of the time. And when you think about that a bit, I'm just kind of like, ooh, is it okay for me to feel like that? But ultimately, it is, and it's up to me. Like, none of my family have been affected by this. None of my friends have been. Myself and Claire are both happy and healthy at the moment. So I can only kind of go on what's in my own sphere, like, and so far it's been okay. Obviously, that could change tomorrow, it could be all different. So I'm just going to try and embrace this mad scenario that we found ourselves in, and just kind of make the most of it, really. I know you know me as well as anybody, and I'm kind of like always a sort of half glass full kind of guy anyway, and would try and see the positives in these things. And that's kind of the way I'm dealing with it, and so today has been a good day, but most days have been a good day.
That's good to hear, though. I think a lot of people probably feel, people who aren't key workers and who haven't been affected by it with a family member or themselves, or I think a lot of people will feel similar to that, really. I think it's kind of slowed us down. It's given us time to breathe a little bit, maybe.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's probably how a lot of people are feeling, but with a kind of slice of guilt on top.
Yeah. People aren't shouting that from the rooftops, because there's a lot of people out there that are in pretty dire situations. But even out with this scenario, out with the COVID crisis that we find ourselves in, there's every day of the year from the beginning of time, somebody out there has been struggling, and that will continue. Even when this goes away, there'll be loads and loads of people out there struggling. But that shouldn't be a reason for you not to, be happy within yourself, like, and kind of and be okay with that. Like, there's no point in kind of being down if you don't really have to be, and if you've got a choice in the matter, why not choose being okay with things, like, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Have you heard any inspiring stories or actions since the pandemic has started?
Yeah, loads of stuff really. Obviously all the stuff that kind of everybody's heard about. What's the guy? Is it Captain Tom or Commander Tom? What's his name? The 100-year-old guy who's been like walking around his garden loads and loads of times and raising millions of pounds. I mean, that's just incredible. Whenever I see guys on the TV. Whenever I was younger, I really never really had an appreciation for kind of like the World War and like all the guys who went and fought and all that. But now that I've kind of grown up a bit and I'm a bit older, anytime I hear stories about people from that generation, I'm glued to it, and I just think that, like, just different breed of person, just totally in awe of somebody with, just listen to that guy. He just seemed to have such a great outlook and stuff. So things like that, like, it's been really positive, and loads of money, loads of people kind of just raising money. Obviously, I was supposed to do the London Marathon, which, when we're recording this, was only supposed to be a few days ago. So that's always, I wasn't personally doing any fundraising, but that's obviously like a massive fundraiser on the calendar, and they kind of then switched it on its head and did that 2.6 challenge, so that like kind of got loads of people thinking creatively about how they might, go about raising money in an alternative way rather than run the marathon. So, people climbing their stairs to the height of Everest, and just thinking of all these really wacky things, like running marathons in their back garden and stuff like that. Loads of people have been doing that. And a friend of mine from back home in Ireland did, him and his family actually did like a marathon relay in their back garden and raised money for a local hospice back at home in Derry, and I donated some money to that. And just, people thinking totally outside the box about ways in which they can kind of, raise money for charity, or just, kind of interact with family and friends, whatever. That's kind of ongoing on a daily basis, and seeing loads of stuff like that's really inspiring. And it's not so much like an inspirational thing, but obviously being like a keen runner, and there's no races on the calendar for the foreseeable future. Scottish Athletics and other kind of governing bodies have been doing virtual races and stuff, where you can go out and run your own race and then upload your Garmin or your GPS data, and they'll compile league tables and so on online. So from a kind of selfish perspective, that kind of stuff like that there's keeping me motivated and keeping me training and giving me kind of goals and stuff to work towards. So yeah, loads and loads of positive stuff, to be honest, mate, and loads of people kind of shining through and then really showing the best in people. It's great. And I don't know about yourself, what it's been like around your neck of the woods, but every Thursday going out and doing the clap for the NHS people, it's every week that's kind of there's more and more people out our back, out clapping, and it's really amazing to see. And then the following day, whenever one of the neighbours was walking past, I could hear having a conversation with one of the other neighbours, and they were saying, when this is all over, we should have a street party. And Claire recently joined like a Facebook group for our street, and loads of people have been posting on it saying, yeah, we should definitely have like a street party whenever this is all over, because of, we've kind of all sort of, whenever you live in a close estate like ours, you don't really chat to your neighbours that much, but this has kind of brought people out a wee bit, and our street would kind of be perfect for it, because it is kind of enclosed and there's not that much traffic goes through it. So I'd love for that to happen. Like, that'll be so cool, I think.
Okay, so just finally, in what ways do you hope all of this might shape the future?
Big question. Kind of just in the ways that we've sort of just been talking about, just people maybe taking the foot off the gas a little bit. I've kind of always been somebody that has, rightly or wrongly, kind of always been able to sort of take a step back and sort of look at stuff, a little bit rationally, and sort of not get caught up too much, and always kind of thinking about what's next, and and just the whole pace of life. I hope anyway hasn't really sort of got the better of me, and and I hope people, now that they've kind of been forced to take a sort of backward step, and have been able to sort of sit and think and really kind of realize what's important to them, and you know, realize that they probably don't need as much as what they think they need, or they need to be, you know, always aspiring for more or whatever, you know. And it's obviously good to be ambitious, you know, and you know, that's a quality that I would think I do possess as well. But I think that people just need to maybe sort of just chill out a bit, like, you know, and just really kind of, I don't know, not always be rushing around and always sort of, you know, frantically worrying about stuff. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to say, is that the people just sort of, you know, don't worry so much about all the wee small things, you know, that the people do worry about. Like, and I know it's natural to be worried about stuff, but I hope people just don't get caught up so much in all the worries that they think are important to them, and they maybe can kind of see the world in it, and, you know, in a different light now that we've kind of had a period of, like, you know, where it's all been a bit slower, and you know, people have been able to sort of, they've had a bit more time in their hands to kind of reflect and just kind of realize what it is that's important to them. And, you know, I hope that kind of comes through whenever I eventually go back into school, that when you're in school, it's always just like, right, we've got to get these kids ready for exams, we've got to get them ready for exams, you know, and that's just the kind of, that's the message all the time. And I am in no way slating anybody that works in my school. I think everybody does a fantastic job, and you know, and I'm speaking to myself here as much as anything. I just hope that people kind of look at kind of education and look at teaching in a more sort of like holistic way, you know, that we can kind of think, right, what is it that we want to teach these young people? You know, what kind of people do we want them to be when they come out of the school, rather than what grades do we want them to have? You know, and obviously that's probably fairly fanciful, you know, just in terms of, you know, kids need grades to go to university, to get jobs, blah, 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 blah. But I would just like to think there's maybe a little bit of room for us to kind of look at things from a different angle, and kind of maybe fill in gaps that we haven't really been kind of hitting in the past, you know, just more sort of life-based skills and stuff, you know, and teach them, I don't know, a little bit more about how to sort of be a better person, or whatever, like, you know. That's very, very fanciful and very sort of, might sound a bit cliche, but that's just kind of the skill that I would, you know, if you could start again and maybe on a clean slate, you know, I would like that to kind of be the approach that we adopt. And again, that's not to say that the school that I work in is in any way not doing a great job. They all absolutely are, and it's really been highlighted throughout this time how much of a community my school is, you know, and how much everybody's really pulling together. And it's been absolutely inspiring. You know, I have so many great colleagues that are doing such great work, and that really absolutely care so much about the young people, that, you know, that they're just like, their lives are devoted to them, you know, and it's great. It's totally inspiring. That'd be my hope, that what we sort of get out of all this is that we've had that time to think about it and maybe approach it slightly differently.
Thanks so much, James. It's been so good talking to you. It's funny talking to friends in a totally different way.
It's been awesome.
It's been really, really good.
Yeah, big time.
Thanks for listening to Positive Negative.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at PosNegative, or find us on Facebook.
And join in the conversation using the hashtag PosNegative.
You can help us to grow by leaving us a review and sharing this episode with your friends and followers.
You'll also find links to what we've talked about in the show notes, or by visiting positivenegativepodcast.com.